I could call the Monday, June 17th, 2024 FAMPO Policy Committee meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Connor, could we please have roll call?
Meg Bonke,
Here.
Lori Hayes,
Here.
Jason Graham,
Here.
Shannon Holmes,
Here.
Bill McIntosh,
Here.
Drew Mullins, Chris Yakubowski,
Here.
Monica Gary,
Here.
Crystal Vanush,
Here.
Marcy Parker,
Here.
Robert Schneider, here,
Just.
Deontay Diggs, Pamela Young,
Online.
Hi, Pam.
David Brown, Catherine Coffey, Gerald Childress,
Here.
Jacob Lane, Joe Stainsby. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Connor. And just for the benefit of everybody here, Gerald Childress is with us tonight from Spotsylvania County, who he has not attended a FAMPO meeting before. So
Welcome. Thank you.
just wanted to make sure everybody knows who he is. And I think through the roll call, you maybe figured out who these two are. City, Jason City, you obviously know Spotsy, Stafford is Monica, Crystal, and me. So
Yes.
and you probably know Monica, Marcy Parker from VDOT, and to your left,
Bob
It-
Schneider Transit.
Dr. Schneider.
And that's Chris.
I don't.
So anyway,
Nice to meet you.
glad you're here.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have next on the agenda, the approval of the agenda. We do have one new item, Ms. Parker.
Yes, if we could please add, under the action items, tip amendment to open public comment. I put it in front of everybody and it's for UPC 123887, which is a small scale project, Route 1 southbound widening with pedestrian accommodations, and it's to add PE funds to the tip.
Okay, and when we add this, there will be a comment period, and we would actually be voting on this at the August FAMPO meeting. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the agenda with this add-on?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please say aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, Ian, we have some public comments or public hearings. The first one is adopting an amendment. Well, I'll let you go ahead.
Sure, we have three public hearings for amendments to the TIP, which we were just talking about, the Transportation Improvement Program. The first one is to adjust funding for FXB Go's Security and Fiber project. The second one is to adjust funding for Transforming Rail in Virginia project. That's quite a large project. The third one is to adjust funding for the new commuter parking lot, Route 1 at Commonwealth Drive. These items were all on your agenda last month because you voted to approve the public comment period. And now they're coming back, and we're inviting comments from the public for those three items at your request.
Okay, do we have anybody from the public that would like to address the policy committee on any of these three public hearings, A, B, and C? If so, please stand. Okay, seeing none, we will close that comment period. We have somebody that has written in.
Yes, on generally all three of.
Okay, please.
From John Walker, no comment on any of these. From Dr. Michael Meyer, no more funding for the empty Fred buses. No funding for a new commuter lot. The existing lots are less than half full now due to work from beds. No funding for any rail projects. All existing rail systems in our area are 60% underutilized now. Pouring more dollars into any rail projects at this point is waste, fraud, abuse of tax dollars. We have one more, Madam Chair. From Larry Jewell. Support the proposed amendments. All seem worthy projects.
Okay,
Done.
all right.
Quick and clear.
Okay, now we have, we'll close that public comment period and we have item 6 on general public comments. Do we have anyone here that would like to address the public on just any general items not related to the prior 3 public comments? Mr. Al Watkins, I saw you leaning.
Tried to make eye contact.
Yes.
I'm shocked. Welcome.
Good evening, members of the policy committee, Chairwoman FAMPO and Al Watkins. I live at 12 Englewood Lane, the George Washington District of Stafford County. I'm sure by now that you kind of know that by heart. I want to take the opportunity first to give thanks to Nicholas Kutnowski of Stafford County, the outgoing chair of CTAC, thanking him for his continued service to our regional community. I also wish the very best to our incoming CTAC chair, Mr. Tim Welch, Responsibility County. Excuse me. Having already witnessed Tim's contributions, I look forward to him maintaining CTAC's pursuit of providing sensible input to FAMPO's policy committee. I would also be remiss if I did not thank Chairwoman Famke for her service to this committee and to our region. I personally have appreciated her willingness to promptly communicate with her constituents, as well as provide her thoughtful concerns to the big picture and her common sense approach to the transportation issues that we all face. As has always been my practice also, when speaking before this committee, I always try to provide a little insight and at least a little tidbit of information. So here's the little piece for this evening. Regarding the Bridge and Parkway project, it's been mentioned from time to time that Celebrate Virginia Parkway might not be usable or not be able to sustain potential increase in traffic. The existing infrastructure for this, however, includes a 4-lane wide parkway, has extensive medians in the center, complete with many turning lanes. It's also fully lighted along the route, includes an 8-foot wide sidewalk along that full route, has extensive stormwater drains along the entire path and the stormwater basins needed to align with those drains. That information is easy to view just by driving along the route. However, when constructed in 2003, you would be surprised probably to find out that it is wide enough that each lane, including the turning lanes, was built with 12-foot widths. Some of the older roads in Stafford, including parts of 17 west of Route 1, are only 11 feet wide. In fact, the lanes of Route 1 just north of that 17 intersection are also only 11 feet wide. And here's the last little tidbit of information about the parkway. In 2018, the Silver Company proposed a new development, proper amendment for that land, for that project, then known as the Villages at Greenbank, came before the Planning Commission in 2018 and 19. When presented to the Planning Commission, which at that time included Supervisors English and Supervisor Lindsay, they informed everyone that Celebrate Virginia Parkway had been designed and built to handle 66,500 vehicles per day. That's around 20,000 more vehicles than the existing model for the new bridge and parkway has anticipated. To summarize, it appears that Celebrate Virginia Parkway is more than suitable to handle any traffic that it might see if it was used as part of the proposed River Bridge.
Time.
Okay, perfect.
Madam Chair, just for the public and some members who are new, we do have cold water bottles in the fridge over there. So if you need to just have a drink of water, there are plenty of bottles in the fridge. Please help yourself.
Okay, any other members of the public that would like to address the policy committee, please?
Good evening, my name is Jacob DeCourcy. I live at 105 Madison Avenue in Fredericksburg, 22405, which is in the Chatham Heights neighborhood just across the bridge. I live on the east side of Chatham Heights Road, and I frequently travel downtown across the Chatham Bridge, primarily by bike or walking at least 5 times a week, and often with my young sons in tow. As I'm sure you're aware, because you installed a pedestrian counter at the end of the bridge a while back, I'm not even close to the only one who uses that route. There's significant foot and bicycle traffic from my neighborhood, as well as neighborhoods on Naomi Road. I'm not only here for myself, therefore, I represent the interests of more than my neighborhood, several. There are 2 serious safety failings the Chatham Heights Road and intersection that I would like to address. The primary and most serious safety failing on that route is that automobile traffic constantly uses the median between the Chatham Heights Bridge and intersection of Kings Highway and Chatham Heights Road as a right-hand turn lane. Rarely a day goes by that either on foot or in my car, I don't see someone misusing this median. I've had cars drive up on me while I am walking and biking there, including with my children in the stroller. I have had to explain to them that it is not a driving lane. I've contacted VDOT, I've filled out FAMPO surveys, and I've contacted my previous Board of Supervisors, Representative Tom Cohen, but to no avail. I'm offering to solve the problem myself. If someone here can tell me where I can pick up 20 traffic cones. A concrete barrier would be the correct solution, but 90% of it can be done by me. The second safety failing is the Chatham Heights Road is designed to encourage pedestrian casualties. It is a busy through street that bisects what ought to be a single residential neighborhood. It is engineered for speeds greatly in excess of the posted 35-mile-per-hour limit. Most cars go 40, plenty of them go 50. And why wouldn't they? It's a wide road with no barriers in the middle or sides. It's an engineering and design failure. Add a middle barrier, plant trees on the side, install curb bump outs. Slowing down traffic is a solved engineering problem. We only need to implement it. Third, there is no pedestrian crossing across Chatham Heights all the way from the McDonald's down to the river, including at the light between Chatham Heights and King Highway. You're asking me to push a stroller with, as of 3 days ago, 3 children across 4 lanes of 45-mile-per-hour traffic. And I'm young and healthy. Anyone with any kind of mobility issues is incapable of crossing the street on their own. We need a safe crossing. Install the crosswalk at the light, calm the traffic. Let's make Chatham Heights a vibrant and walkable neighborhood connected to downtown as it always should have been. I understand that the Chatham Heights issues are bigger and will take longer, but before I leave, is there anyone here who can give me their information to address the Kings Highway median issue? It is a trivial solution that will contribute to your goal of 0 highway traffic deaths. This particular case is the easiest thing in the world, and it will prevent cars at 40 miles an hour getting strollers full of children because they're driving where cars don't belong. Is anyone able to give me their contact information today to address this issue?
So we don't typically do feedback with people, but I will just tell you, there was something in with Stafford County. We addressed this issue last year, not the median issue, okay? And we have it in our current CIP with VDOT because I physically came down and walked that road myself and had, Marcy, you may remember the big ditches that were filled along the road. Because we had people that reached out when they were getting ready to go down to the 4th of July parade or Christmas parade, and their stroller wheels were down about this deep.
Yep.
So you know all about it. I don't have to tell you. So I'll be more than happy to talk to you afterwards. And if you want to write down your information, or you can connect with VDOT if you happen to stay at the whole meeting, but I know you have children, so I don't expect you to do that. But if you write your number down on here, I'll be more than happy to call you and get you additional information.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
if you need to retire immediately, I have a 3-day.
Yes. Oh, my. Okay, that's very
I
important.
wasn't sure if you added one or lost one and you said add.
Okay, so anybody else from the public that would like to address the board? All right, thank you very much for coming. We welcome public comment. Okay, bringing that back. Do we have anybody that has written in comments, Becky?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
From Jane Leeds. Safe, unobstructed and meaningful access to public transit still does not have any priority in our planning process. It is strictly devoted to those whom can drive or access transit without reasonable accommodations. The latter is the law of the land, federal, and it's not being equally applied to serve those who are challenged physically and or financially. Quality of life is not possible without transportation, something our governing bodies have failed to recognize or attach any meaningful accommodation to make it work successfully. This oversight is not a matter of funding, but priorities. Many cities and counties have devoted their efforts to make priorities in their budgeting process to create contiguous sidewalks, audible signage, and other safety features for those who cannot otherwise access transportation of any kind. FAMPO Policy Committee has failed for decades to acknowledge these shortcomings and issues in a meaningful way to allow the disabled, financially challenged, to access in a safe manner local transit. Their lack of humanity for those who struggle to gain employment, access public services, or attain any reasonable level of quality of life is a black eye for our region. Few businesses and governing agencies will choose the central region because it simply does not offer anything of value to them and their employees when it comes to accessible, meaningful, timely, and safe transit systems. Many companies work on federal holidays, weekends, and late at night. There is little and mostly nothing available in the central region to accommodate this work requirement. The future will hold bad ratings and stories from our veterans trying to safely access the new Veterans Administration facility in a timely manner will prove that lack of planning. Frankly, the men and women who sacrificed their future health and well-being deserve better. You have failed them miserably. Be sure to remember that on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and other public holidays designed to honor their service, you have done little to fulfill their needs. Shame on you. And from Abraham Cordova. Hi, just moved to Fredericksburg. Please, we need sidewalk, streetlights for Mine Road. I don't know why this area road project didn't require sidewalks. Arlington and Alexandria are required for any road projects, must have sidewalks. Thanks. Road project for Mine Road. That concludes our comments.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's shown?
Second.
They have a motion and a second. I just want to also let you know that we are ratifying the, I guess it's called the MBI task order for the Harrison Road model from last month. Just bringing that to everybody's attention. And because it was an add-on item, any discussion? Yes.
A quick thing on the May 30th minutes, number 6, ask Mr. Mullins, Drew Mullins, it says Drew Sullins. So out of respect for Mr. Mullins, I just thought we could make that.
But those are the minutes that are on consent agenda now, May 20th.
I don't know, I had
How
a,
about the hard copy?
That's fine. We'll make that
Thank you.
amendment on
Thank
the,
you.
on the
Great.
second.
Yeah.
That's a typo, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Moving down to our Ian's report, item number 8.
Yes, I have some good news for you. First, I'll just kind of, yeah, Connor, if you could just pull up the next slide. This is the good news. You'll remember that at the last meeting, I suggested that we start to think about a different way to do the CMAC and SCGB funding allocations, right? So I must give credit to Paul from Spotsylvania. He suggested that we reach out to federal highways because it's an unusual change to the policy that we're suggesting. And I did, and we got an answer just today. So I literally copied and pasted from the email onto this. And the two, actually that should say 1 and 2, not 1 and 1. Apologies, as you can see, I did this at the last minute today. So we asked if we can use these two approaches, which are used by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority in our process of allocating funding for congestion mitigation and air quality funding and surface transportation block grant. And I put it into these two questions. Northern Virginia, they ask the jurisdiction to prioritize their applications. So we don't have to prioritize them. Each jurisdiction will say, this is our most important project, this is our number 2 project, this is our number 3 project, and we would then take the jurisdiction's preferences to allocate funding. There's their answer. Federal Highways does not have an issue with number 1. Number 2, apologies for the number again. Northern Virginia Transportation Authority then allocates funding to jurisdictions based on population size. They have a formula which calculates what percentage of the region is represented by the jurisdiction, and then they divide up the funding for that year on the basis of that formula. So here's their answer. I do not see that being an issue if FAMPO decides to move a similar model, right? That's the key phrase. Federal Highways would need to review the process to ensure satisfaction with the regulation. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? So we would make a proposal, send it to them and say, could you review this? Does this meet the criteria? Does this meet regulations? FAMPO clarification should keep in mind the requirements of an MPO versus Northern Virginia, which is not an MPO. That's true, but they do the work of an MPO for this particular project, but it is not an MPO. During the discussion, think about the additional factors outside of population that FAMPO would potentially use as part of the process. Please feel free to reach out to Steve Miner from FHWA. I'm not sure whether Steve's online, he often listens in remotely to our meetings, but the point is that generally they're okay with that approach that is used by Northern Virginia. So we can discuss it. We can think about our options, think about what formula we might use. Staff is happy to work with the TAC and work up some alternative proposals for you. Bring it to the TAC, bring it back here. You can think about it, and then we'll submit it first to Federal Highways to see whether they're happy with our preferred proposals before we implement anything. The main goal here is it takes a lot of the stress out of the process, because at the moment we have this complicated methodology and everybody's a little bit unhappy at the end, right? You get to the position where everybody's sort of happy. Everybody's sort of just a little bit happy, and we as staff try to balance the unhappiness around so that everybody gets a little bit of unhappiness. With this method, first of all, you would prioritize your own projects, and second of all, we would allocate the funding based on a formula, and we've suggested that it could be slightly different to Northern Virginia, population plus some other factors. And that's what we would first have to think about and bring you proposals for you to think about. But once you agree the formula and Federal Highway signs the formula, there's no need to fight anymore with the other jurisdictions, because you will know the percentage of money that you get every year in the beginning. You will also be able to choose your projects and allocate them. What our role will be is to make sure that your project qualifies federal funding by meeting congestion mitigation targets, by meeting air quality targets, et cetera, et cetera. So we would qualify the project still. We would still score them, but the scoring would be almost like a screening in, where the project would be checked if it does meet the criteria that we need for that kind of funding. But then you would decide, do you want to put more on road X or road Y? Do you want to put it on the sidewalk? Whatever, that's entirely the jurisdictions. We still do it, we still authorize it, and FAMPO would still need to vote approval on the allocations, but the jurisdictions would have a much greater say in that process than you do now, and you would know the percentage that you're going to get long before we even get the money. So we feel like it would be more fair, because otherwise, this year, so, Stafford gets more money. Next year, Spotsylvania gets more money. Then the following year, the city gets more money, and everybody else feels sort of cheated a little bit because the other guy got the money. This would do away with that, because you would get the same percentage every year, and you can review the formula, say every 5 years or something, to see that it's still keeping track of developments, because you don't know what developments are. That's the proposal. But that's good news.
Okay,
Means we're allowed to do this, and it would meet the criteria, except that last part that we need to review and just check what items we want to put in the formula. They just want to be happy with those are the criteria. But that's very good.
any questions for Ian? Connor, is Mr. Minor online?
He is.
Okay, he's not.
He often is, but
Okay,
not
but
every
he's
week.
not today. Okay,
Next slide.
all right.
So what we've done is looked at the crash data and congestion data for I-95. We've done this in a while, and I kind of have had this feeling that it's getting worse, that we're seeing more crashes on I-95, and that the congestion the last couple of months has been terrible. But I have no objective data to say that, so I put staff to work, and poor Connor and John have spent the last couple of weeks, and Becky, getting us new data. So this is what we're going to show you, and I'm going to go through it quite quickly. Remember, this all gets emailed to you tomorrow morning, so you can read it in more detail. So we broke up I-95 into like segments and analyzed each segment to compare to see how well it's doing. Next slide. So Connor, if you can explain the crash rates, there you see each segment. So we've gone all the way up to Woodbridge, basically. And there we've put the percentages there. The number of crashes you can see, 41, 65, 64, 24 in the different segments. Southbound, and then on the other side, northbound. And you can see then this crash rate is a complicated percentage that Connor can explain it, I can't.
Well, Becky was big help on this, but I'll speak in her stead, but what she did is she went into the VDOS Power BI tool, got the crashes for each of the segments studied. So 130 to 133, 133 to 143, 143 to 152, etc. Then you get the total crash amount for the data period was January to April for 2024, which is the most recent time period. And crash rate is just a result of a formula. The amount of crashes, the length of the segment, the traffic volume, and what that results in, also the time period, so just for 3 months, is you get crash rate. And it looks like just an arbitrary number, but essentially the higher that it is, the more dangerous the segment of road is going to be. So the most dangerous segment of road on this portion of 95 is Dumfries to Dale City northbound, the crash rate of 100%. The safest is actually between Warrenton Road and Garrison with a lower crash rate. Northbound is 57%. So
Okay, Connor, I have one question here. Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe you can, Becky or Connor can help explain. How can you have a crash rate more than 100%? Yeah, I know the number looks arbitrary, but
Multi-vehicle.
but when you start doing percentages and it's more than 100, I start to wonder what's going on.
There's a reason I handed this over to Connor and Becky.
Yes.
It's actually a relative formula. The crash rate formula starts out with crashes per 100 million vehicles. So when I use the 100 million number, the crash rates all had more zeros on them. Basically, it's a relative, the formula is crashes divided by 100,000, 10,000, whatever. So each of these are relative to each other. And basically it's the length, it's the volume, and then the total crashes are just for a 3-month period. So when I started seeing all of the numbers have 108,000, I went up and changed the 100 million number to 100,000.
Yeah.
So they're all relative to each other. And that's just.
Not out of 100.
Sure, no, that makes sense. Okay, so it's really, okay, that works.
It's like a work comp on.
I was just about to say, it's like war in baseball.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Relative to each other.
right. So, okay, but are they so they're relative to each other, but do we understand how they are relative to other parts of 95 or other highways in America? Because it's one thing to say, you know, looking at them relative to each other, but I'd like to know, are they more dangerous than, you know, what's in Northern Virginia or what's, you know, further south toward Richmond?
Jason, I think some of the slides
But I've come
on this presentation.
All right, I don't mean to jump the gun.
Great, all right, do you have more on that, Connor?
No, that pretty much covers it for this slide.
Okay, all right,
We have some more slides, then we can take some more questions.
sure. Gerald?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. The only question I have, they're a year over year. Maybe that's in a further slide, but we're looking at 3-month period here, and we've done a lot of work over that area. So, has it improved in 5 years?
We've compared the same period a year ago with some subsequent slides.
Thank you.
So, Connor, can you explain this?
Well, this is just the table view, and then you also have the same time period for 2023.
So there's a change on the right hand
Yes.
side that shows you the change. So it's gone down or it's gone up or it's stayed the same.
So some portions, you've seen the crash rate go down, like between 130 and 133, it's gone down significantly. But then for most others, there's been an increase, like between that same portion, but southbound, an increase of 64% of the crash rate.
Been a large increase year over year for this time of the year in that section, that southbound, right?
Southbound.
The southbound through Stafford and into the city of Fredericksburg, there's been a big increase in crashes
Because we don't know.
in this first 4 months of the year versus the first 4 months of the year 2023. So I kind of had a gut feel this was happening, but I didn't have any numbers until now. Some of them have improved quite a bit. So there are also those negative numbers are actually an improved, right?
Yes.
So in the northbound, in that same stretch, there's been an improvement, significant improvement in the northbound number of crashes. But in the southbound, it's gotten worse. There's more crashing in the southbound direction.
Connor, this is great information. For those of us that are sitting way back here, we're having a hard time because
The
of
brown and black.
the brown
Yeah.
with the black.
That was a bad design decision.
We can't blame.
But
them
you got A+ for interior design. Is there any way you can if people want to share that somewhere, could you just redo it sometime this week and just put it in a different color that's a lot easier to read? And then, if we want to share it with staff or whatever, that'd be great.
Tomorrow, before we email it out, I'll ask Connor just to change the color. So
Okay.
you'll get a lighter color, you can see it. Right, next slide. Make it white on yellow. There you can see it. We've looked at days of the week, and we've also looked at the different years. So you can see where the problems are and where the problems aren't. But there's certainly segments of I-95 where the crash rate has certainly gotten worse.
So I would think
These are crash rates.
Sorry, these are total number of
total
crashes.
number of crashes.
Yeah,
So
that's
I would
great.
have to look at VDOT. Marcy, I would think that the state has all kinds of information on this. Would that be an accurate statement, looking back over the last 20, 30 years on crashes on the interstate?
I don't know that we go back that far on crashes.
But at least-
Typically look at the last 5 years.
Okay.
And
Okay,
this is from VDOT's Power BI. publicly
This is VDOT's.
Yes.
But one thing I don't think this is taken into consideration is the amount of construction that we've had out there, the weather conditions during that time of year.
Rained every day.
Things like that. So
Yeah.
that plays a big part.
That's correct. There are two things going on. The one is lots of construction, which always pushes the crash rate up. The second thing is we've added capacity. When you add capacity, the speed goes up because now there's 12 lanes instead of 6. You can drive faster. When you drive faster, guess what that does to the crash rate, right? So in theory, they should all have trended up a bit. So the ones that have gone down are the interesting ones because why did they go down? Don't know.
Jason?
One quick, maybe just request, if this isn't too much. I know, so this is the raw numbers of crash data. I'd be curious to know about the crash rate because, we've got vehicle miles traveled also greatly increasing during this time period as well. So I would, just like you said, like you'd expect the raw numbers to go up just by sheer population size. But I'd be curious to know if the rate has increased as well or has
So those
decreased.
crazy percentages that Becky was trying to explain, those are the rates. These are the actual numbers.
I know, and I wanted to see this as rates.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can compute that.
That's it. Thanks.
Once you got the volume, once you've got the volume.
Exactly.
Okay, that'd be
For the
great.
next meeting, we can do that.
Okay,
These colors,
Colors are better. Next. Okay, so where are these crashes? Looking at the big corridors. So the staff got a little creative. I didn't ask for this, but they did it anyway. And they looked at the big I-95, I-81, I-64, where are the big problems? And you can see the total crashes there by county or by city, right? So Stafford is more crashes currently than other, see Spotsylvania down there at 2,000. This only on I-95 and I-81, only the big highways, none of the local roads. You can see that Stafford portion of I-95 is getting a lot of crashes. Now, this is a different time period. This is 2016 to 2024. So now you have to understand that there was construction on I-95 during that period. The express lanes were built and the bridges were built. So that partially explains what's happening there.
Stafford has miles of mine.
I was just gonna ask you that. We have more miles than others.
That's why I'd want to see the rates here too. Everything needs to be normalized because right now if it's just raw, yeah.
Okay, next one.
It has a lot of construction.
All the
You
time.
can see the darker the color, the more crashes there are. Next one. Okay, so this is looking a little bit more carefully at the jurisdiction. And if you look at Colin, can you explain the blue bar chart with the blue lines? Because from this distance, it's hard to.
First left is gonna be, mile marker 126. then the furthest right is gonna be mile marker 160.
So across from left to right is northbound on I-95, right? So you can see in the middle, there are those spikes where it gets really high. And in northern Virginia, the further north you go, you can see that the crash rates get higher.
This is gonna be 140, so Stafford. And you see like there's a spike there. And you see there's a spike at 143, which would be Garrisonville, et cetera. And then there's more spikes on.
So Woodbridge and Dale Cross, you can see there, look at the crashes.
156.
Very high up there. Okay, next one. All right, so congestion. What is happening with congestion? So this is quite recent data, and it's looking at the travel time. How long does it take you to get from place to place? And it's hard to see because the color is purple and blue, but effectively I can explain it, and then you can look at it on your computer at home where you'll see the colors better. But effectively the blue there is the portion in Stafford that is seeing a reduction in travel time. So you can go further in a unit of time. But the last southern part of Stafford on I-95, just before you get to the bridge, if you're going southbound, the travel time has increased, taking you longer to get through there. And basically the whole of Spotsy, it's taking longer than it did in 2022, right? So between 2022 and now, most of Spotsylvania's section of I-95 is taking longer to do a trip. The northern part of Stafford, it's taking longer to do a trip. But there's a portion where the new express lanes are now in Stafford, where the travel time has gotten less than it was in 2022. So the express lanes have actually achieved something. It's cutting down the travel time for that middle portion of Stafford. We'll try and get you this in better colors for your August meeting, but we will email this, and when you look at it on your computer, it's easier to see those colors. It's when it gets up on that projector screen that it's hard to see those colors. But that's just I-95. And we did something more. We looked at the whole region, all the major roads, right? This is also hard to read, but you don't need to get into the detail here. If you look at the map on the left, then you distinguish the purple and the blue. Okay, so the purple, the travel time has gotten up, and it's all our major roadways. Can you see that? Between 2022 and now, it's taking you longer to get anywhere, except for those sections that are blue right now. So you can see a couple of sections through Stafford. It's quicker to get anywhere, but the major roadways are generally taking you longer to get anywhere. Again, there is southern Stafford. There are a couple of sections of major roadways that are blue, but generally it's taking longer to get anywhere. And in the city, the same story. It's generally taking you longer than it did in 2022 to get anywhere in this region. And that's important because if that keeps getting worse year after year after year, you know where you are, right? The one on the right loads up a section of it in more detail, so you can see the blues. And if I'm not mistaken, that road that goes at a 45-degree angle up to the left, I think that is US 17 in southern Stafford. You can see there's some blue there. So some of 17 has improved a little in 2022. And remember, we were thinking about COVID. What has COVID done to you all and to our drivers, right? This is what COVID has done. But you see that portion of 17 east of I-95, there's purple there. You can see on Route 1 in Stafford, there's purple there.
And that's all Butler Road
Yeah.
that needs to be expanded.
So you can see there, some places are a little better. The general tone is that the travel time to get anywhere, which is what matters, right? You don't care about what speed you're doing it. What you care about is how long does it take to safely get somewhere. And it's taking you longer generally.
Okay,
Next slide.
1 sec, please,
Oh, yeah.
Ian, Supervisor Banuch, or
Just have Two questions. So it says down at the bottom, elective time period is only from 4 to 7 p.m. And at the top of the slide is 2018 to 2019 versus 2023.
Yes.
Keep saying 2022. So is it 2018 to 2019 versus 23,
I beg
24?
pardon on
Or is
this
it
one.
22?
So on this one, comparing 2018-19 to 23-24, it's a period of, let's say, a year. Yes, we're trying to establish on this slide what did COVID do to the travel pattern? That's the best answer we can give right now based on the INRIX data, which is available. Because the current OIB and VDOT data is not up to recent periods. We haven't yet got some of the VDOT data for 2023, and we certainly don't have any of it for 2024. So we went to INRIX because they have done more recent, well, they published more recent numbers. VDOT is still assessing and checking their numbers. But this is from INRIX.
Hey, Will?
Thank you. I'm looking at this, like, I'm having a hard time seeing any patterns, right? Why one section of 17 is blue and one is purple, and one section of one is blue and one is purple. Do you have any grand overriding for what's happening, but it's producing this kind of mishmash of patterns, or
My theory, and it's just theory.
Yeah, okay. I want to hear if there's an organizing theory here.
So my theory is that local trips have increased significantly and long distance trips have reduced.
Okay.
So that's why little portions of I-95, we're seeing a little bit of a breather. Because some of those people that used to drive to DC are not. They're staying home and working from home, but they get bored at home. So they need to go to the coffee shop. They need to go fetch the kids. They need to go do something. So they're not sitting at home all the time. They're actually doing local trips. So people are working from home, but they're doing lots of local trips in greater numbers than they are going on those long distance trips, right? The truck traffic, however, is a totally different story. The truck traffic, we know for a fact, has increased by more than 11% since the beginning of COVID. So you will be seeing on the roads more trucks than you used to see in 2019. That's a fact. VDOT's data agree with this data. There are way more trucks. But the cars, the pattern has shifted a bit. More people working from home, but they're doing local trips. So the purple is going up on some of those local roads. That's the theory. Each piece of data adds to the picture, so maybe the theory will change as we get more data.
So I think the
Marcy.
blue on 17. That's 17.
Yeah.
So I think that's why 17 got better, just in 6 lanes. Finished it up. Started all the years.
But remember that the network, traffic on the network is like water running down a hill. You block it here, it goes there. You open up 17, now watch. The people that were taking a different route, slowly they're going to migrate to that 17 that's now much better, and then eventually that one will get blocked. The traffic moves like water, and it takes the easiest path over time. So this always, it migrates all the time. So when one road becomes difficult, people take a different route. So you have to actually maintain the whole network, because if you don't, traffic will just move where it's easy.
Okay, Lori?
I just have a question. When we're looking at 95 northbound, the widening of 95, so those local lanes from Route 3 up, that seems to have made it so much better. Crash data on that section and what that looks like, as well as time to get from Route 3 up.
And the ones that were finished, the soonest was southbound through the CD a couple years ago. And so when we saw those sections, southbound 95, that is more safe. The northbound through lanes are fairly recent.
We'll wait to see what the impact of the northern lanes has. We don't know.
Yeah, because I think it's made a huge difference. And then, the decide before the divide thing, can we look back at that and say, okay, that created some traffic issues maybe, right? Just in the interim when people were getting used to that. Like, did we have crashes at that point in time when that opened up because people weren't aware that they needed to decide before the divide?
So the southbound section of I-95 in Stafford, in southern Stafford. Crash rate has gone up.
But I'm wondering
That's-
if that's what it is,
That's the
though.
part we want to think about, why that's happening.
If
I
people are
think
still
that's-
learning.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, I've missed my exit before, back from the airport or something, not paying attention, and at night, I think at night it's very confusing. There are a lot of choices up there. And unless I think for the average person, if they haven't looked at it in advance, now maybe if they've got this and they're focusing on that, but it's oh, it does? Oh, really? Oh, well, that's a problem. Well, I didn't rely on this.
We need
It was
to
my
call-
own
We
ignorance,
need to
but
call Google and
it,
give them a few words. I'm gonna go to the next.
It seems to be hit or miss.
So
oh,
yes.
that is interesting.
And I was like, oh, right.
So-
Okay.
So here's the executive summary, if you will. The most dangerous segment is northbound between Dumfries and Dale City, outside of our region. The safest segment is Warrington Road, Garrisonville Road, northbound, right? That is the safest segment on I-95. The new express lanes are alleviating some afternoon traffic in southern Stafford. We can see that it's going blue instead of purple.
That was not the case on Saturday, I've heard.
No.
That is true. There are some days when it is
Yeah.
unthinkably bad. And that's where you got the data sources from.
All right, Monica?
So I was just wondering, and I think I'd have to go back and look at them, but maybe just answer this quickly. If we took out the Dumfries to Dale City, what's the next most?
We'll just go to the crash rates. There. It would be the southbound segment in the same area.
Found a quiet and
Yeah, look out to the left-hand side of the picture. The same.
I think she means.
Oh, I see. If you take both out, if you take both out, then it's between Dumfries and Aquia Harbour. Northbound.
Okay,
Next, go to a very last slide. This is just a quick commercial reminder. There's no FAMPO policy committee in July, and the next meeting is the 19th of August. So you have a month off. Wish you all a great summer here at FAMPO. And we also get a month off because we had lots of extra work this semester. With the RTA subcommittee and all those things, we did lots of extra work with staff. So we're very happy to have a month of less committees. We'll have the bike and pedestrian committee in July, but none of the others.
all right. Any other questions for Ian?
Not a question, just. a
Yes,
comment,
Chris.
if I'll make it very quick, is that when you take a look at this, one of the things to keep in mind is that all of this is regionally based. If we fix it in Stafford, it's gonna be messed up somewhere else. As Ian said, traffic finds the least path of resistance. So I would hope that us as jurisdictions can come together and work together, because people don't really care if they're sitting in traffic in Stafford or Spotsy or Fredericksburg, they're sitting in traffic. And we need to fix the entire network and not just say mine, yours. We don't care, because it's affects all of us. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of that, when you look at congestion, if you want to get out of congestion, you want to ride the VRE train. So on that wonderful note,
Got BRE right here to tell us.
yeah, so I'm gonna turn it over to Nick Ruiz from VRE, and you have the floor.
All right, Bunky and members of the policy committee hearing this evening. I'm gonna stand over here because if I was over in my usual spot, I'd be talking into Dr. Snyder's. So I'm gonna give you a brief overview of our system planning update. Should take me about 20-25 minutes, and I'm happy to get questions from the floor during my presentation. If you want to interrupt me for
Can we do it in 10 minutes?
Oh, we can do it in 10 minutes. Well, probably not, 20 minutes.
Quick as you can.
Next slide. I don't think I have to convince anyone in this room that the world's very different now than it was natural last update. Those of you who are not familiar with what system plans are, they're long-range vision documents for transit. Every transit agency does one in some fashion. Ours is called a system plan. And what we sought to respond to in our updated plan is these three things primarily, but a whole host of things. Communities are changing and growing. I don't think I need to convince anyone in this room too that the population growth in this area is immense and it's going to continue through 2050, which is the horizon year of our plan. Northern Virginia is projected to grow by 35% population, but the Fredericksburg region by 65%. Unfortunately, most of the regional high-paying jobs are going to still cluster in the regions four up in DC and on the high-capacity transit corridor in Virginia. So 65% more people, but not 65% more jobs in this region means most people are going to be commuting out. They're going to be on 95 and beyond. Telework is much more of an established thing now than back in 2019. Currently, only 37%, well, currently as of 2022, we do need to update that stat. Only 37% of VRE riders do not telework at all, so they're going into the office 5 days a week. So that contrasts with 2019. And then transforming around Virginia, the Commonwealth-led initiative is going to build a significant amount of rail capacity in the corridor in the next 6 to 7 years, which is going to allow us to run 63% more weekday trains by 2020. So all those things together, you can go to the next half of the slide. Maybe 30 years ago, we could have said that Northern Virginia ended at the Occoquan River. I don't think that's the case now. There's congestion, there's real big city problems in this region that I think transit should play a role in between now and 2020. If you move to the next slide, I'll just very briefly go through these. System Plan 2050 vision. The operative word in this vision is that VREs grow to serve the region. We are not going to be sustainable as a viable transportation option with 8 trains going north and 8 trains going south in the peak period, peak direction. As the population grows, as the employment grows, we are going to need to grow with it. If you move to the next slide, Connor. I won't read through all of these verbatim, but I just want to point you to the first slide, or to the first goal that we use in screening our service alternative. That's safety and reliability. Yes, we can add service earlier than we plan to, but it would not be a very reliable service. And so it is not a good practice from a transit perspective to put service out on the rails that doesn't work for people, that's going to get caught up in all the regional congestion. We are going to wait until transforming rail in Virginia, until other big rail capacity initiatives are complete, so that we can add service and provide more meaningful, reliable service and do it safely too. Going on to the next slide. Very, very briefly, our planning process was a 3-phase process. We started back in June 2022. We completed all of our technical analyses. We're wrapping up the planning documentation. All of that stuff should be on our website here in the next couple of months. But we are essentially at the tail end of the process now. There's a lot of areas of future study that I think we're going to be looking at during the next calendar year. But this is kind of how we proceeded through, and the VRE operation for the policy committee and also the FAMPO tag have heard my updates over the last year. Going on to the next slide. So in the short term, what are we looking to do between now and 2030, kind of commensurate with all the big improvements on the rail corridor? And that's running that 63% more daily round trips by 2030. That amounts to 14 round trips on the Fredericksburg line. So currently we're 8 round trips. So 14 round trips on the Fredericksburg line, and then 7 trips on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. If you're not familiar, we are looking to start our limited Saturday service by the end of the calendar year. That will be 3 round trips. I'm very excited for that. I think it's going to really be a proof of concept that will be very successful in the long run. What we hope to do when we have more capacity, what we have demonstrated demand, is to expand that to 2030. And we'll also be able to run a limited reverse flow service, not the full bi-directionality that a lot of people have asked us for. Because of the ongoing rail capacity constraints, but we will be able to offer something and kind of test out that market. Moving on to the next slide, this is kind of our overall vision. This is our 26-year horizon for what we hope VRE will be by 2050. And that's a peak period, peak direction train every 20 minutes, so that's 3 trains an hour going up, and a reverse peak train every 30 minutes, that's 2 trains going down. In the shoulders, in the middle of the day, evenings, weekends, we would be offering bi-directional power service. That's our baseline service, basically spreads something out there for everyone, while still responding to the fact that our ridership is still likely to be held at peak, even in 2050. You know, DC is a desk and computer kind of town, and there's still a lot of office work, and there's a lot of 9 to 5 type of work schedules, so that's still going to be a major demand for us. One exciting thing that we're looking to do even before 2050 is start adding some limited express service, and that will essentially be trains that will stop at the farthest out stations in our region and then run express into the region. That's really a concept that we conceived of because the travel times are really long and are not always uncompetitive with driving, especially if you're choosing to pay the 30, 40 bucks and go in the toll lanes. So these express trains or skip stop trains, if you will, I think are really going to put the rail service at a more competitive level. So in short, that's going to be 116 trains on the network, or 58 trains every day, every weekday on the Fredericksburg line, with a train every hour.
And Nick, when do you think those will be operational? What?
The express trains, we hope by 2030.
Okay.
They're kind of in concert with the additional service. 14, because we really aren't in a position right now to take someone's train away from the station. But as you add more, you might say, well, some of those trains don't need to stop at every station. Moving on to the next slide here. Really what we're hoping is that by 2050, BRE is the region's spine transit. Today, you really can't easily do 3-state transit rides, and a lot of people do, but it's just not a pleasant trip. But in the future, somebody could be taking a local Fredericksburg transit bus to a Fredericksburg station, getting on BRE, going up to the city, and then hopping the metro 2 stops to the town. And that would be a totally feasible trip by 2050. And there's a lot of jobs.
I do this now.
Other thing I'll point out here is that we're looking to explore how we can serve the communities farther south of Fredericksburg with some connected to us to Caroline County and It's not cost effective, and we don't feel it's a good use of BRE's resources or the region's resources to propose expanding the rail service beyond spots of 8 by 2050, but the buses are a fraction of the cost and become a proof of concept. Moving on to the next slide, just want to talk a little bit about some of the benefits. We ran the numbers on if we were to implement all of that service in 2050. It's a lot of service. What kind of regional societal benefits would we see? So vehicle miles traveled right off the bat, 51.1 million miles that wouldn't be driven on the region roadways because of that level of service. Annual vehicle operating cost savings, $16.7 million of like you and me dollars, right? Like dollars in our pocket that we don't have to spend operating vehicles. That's a lot of mortgage payments. That's a lot of 5 to 9 college tuition plan contributions. That's a lot of dinners out on Caroline Street. And so it's a huge, regional benefit. People aren't spending that money. And then of course, the other 3 here, increase in passengers, CO2 avoided, annual travel delay. We were talking a little bit about truck traffic earlier, 11% more now than before the pandemic. We did a little thought experiment. We said, well, we're making investments to the rail corridor. What happens if the rail corridor just didn't exist? I know that's kind of a theoretical thing, but if not a single freight train could run on the corridor because it's so congested or it wasn't maintained, you'd have 4,180 more daily truck trips by 2030 on 9. So if you want to quantify that, you want to visualize what that means. That's a lane, a full lane of trucks end to end from the Pentagon to Boston. So the rail network already does a tremendous service to this region. And we don't see it. That's bad for our trains, it's bad for the steamboat. So moving on to the next slide here, some of the infrastructure and capital costs that we would need to undertake. This is 2024 capital dollars, and this is above and beyond what's already planned and funded in Virginia and current CIP. A rather considerable need here, but these are conservative estimates based on a whole host of factors. Things are going to change between now and 2050, but if you were to build it all tomorrow, it would be roughly $359 Moving on to the next slide here, the other side of the coin of capital is the fleet. So we run a 100-car fleet. Roughly 50 to 60 of that is allocated to the Fredericksburg line. By 2030, we'll have 121 cars. But to fully run that or fully fleet that level of service by 2050, we need over 200 cars. So a rail car is about $4 to $5 million pop. They're not cheap vehicles, and so you can see over the next couple of decades, we would theoretically need to, and I say theoretically because all dependent on load factors, all dependent on demand. But if we reach the kind of demand that we would be projecting between 2030, you would need to purchase additional rail cars, as well as replace the ones that are coming up on their useful life, which is starting about 2037. About 2047, we'll need to basically replace our cars. On the next slide, Connor, same story for locomotives. We currently run 20 locos, and we need to run over a 30 locomotive fleet by 2050. So we have to make some rather significant investments in the locomotive, fleet. One thing we are going to be looking at in the next couple of years is the technology. Currently the diesel electric locomotives. There are new technologies that are just starting to simmer up nationally and internationally that could be more efficient for us in the future. We haven't really cracked that nut yet. But if you look at the gray bars trending down between 2029 and 2031, you'll notice that all of our locos are coming up on their end of useful life. So there will be that business decision at some point here in the next couple of years, what to do with those existing locomotives.
Please buy ones that have a high initial acceleration.
That's always a trade-off, right, with electric versus diesel, is the acceleration. Like electric cars. On to the next slide. Turning over the page to operating costs here while we're projecting 50. Ignore scenario A, scenario A1. Essentially what that is scenario A, if we got to the 2030 level of service, that's the 14 round trips, and we just said, let's just stop there. What kind of costs will we be seeing in 2050 as a result of that decision versus what kind of operating costs will we be seeing in 2050 full 2050 service fee. So you can see there's a rather large projected deficit between revenues and expenses, and that is also a nut that we have not cracked. We just present the data as it exists. We present our vision as what we think the region deserves, what VRE wants to be when we grow up, and how we solve this is something for wall and future decision. But just one thing I'll point out, pre-pandemic, we were running about 4 million on our best year, 4 million passengers a year. In 2050, we could be carrying over 8 million passengers both on weekdays and weekends, total year. Be a 365-day operation. So, even compared to pre-pandemic, a considerable increase in value to the region, additional rides that are being taken that are not. Moving on to the next slide, this is my final content slide here. Right now, we're at about 77 to 7,800 average daily riders, take the midweek average. By 2050, if we implement the service, we're looking at 28,000 average daily rider. That's a 262% increase in projected ridership because of the implementation of the service, as well as the growth in population. Do you have a question?
Yeah,
Jason.
thank you. So we're looking at essentially a tripling now and 6 years from now on the Fredericksburg line. And is that mostly, I'd like to know where that is coming from if the idea is that, or just how that breaks down, because if it's not coming in, your commuter types, do we think it's the reverse? Do we think it's, weekend? How did you come to that?
So
That's
still,
a big jump.
In 2050, still, like somewhere around 80% of the demand, the ridership demand is going to be peak. That's just what the model is telling us, where the jobs are, what types of jobs there are, where the people are, when they need to travel. But that's still 20% is some other time. That's a 20% that we compare.
Right, but I mean, I'm talking about 2024 and 2030, just those two bars.
Yeah.
Look, tripling from 2024 to 2030. So you're projecting that we'll have 3 times as many riders in 6 years.
Yeah.
Where are they coming from?
So primarily, so it's two things. It's
Totally apart.
it's a return, it's a gradual, what we're seeing is slow, but gradual return to more days in office, maybe not a 5-day in office type of schedule, but more days in office, as well as just population.
Okay, you really think that population growth alone is pretty much gonna drive that?
It's fairly significant. I wish I had the slide in here. Ms. Bonke has seen it, in the operations board that shows just how much more growth projected to occur. And that's already planned housing stock, that's already, what's in your comprehensive plans.
There are two other things going on here, which are multipliers, which it's hard to quantify. The first one is when you introduce weekend trains, what invariably happens is somebody tries the train out on the weekend, likes it, and then starts taking it during the week because they realize how convenient it is. It's hard to quantify that number, but it does happen. When you start offering more services, more options, people tend to go, oh, wait, I can use this. Secondly, if you add more trains per day in each direction, there are people who don't take it now because it just doesn't come at the right time. But now, as you add more options on the regular commute, it also adds people. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Also, we recently approved the 18-month repairs, and so I know that staff in the area has been working really diligently to reach out to groups that we utilize that specifically, like homeschooling groups and getting into those networks. So we're expecting a lot of expansion, different areas and different riders.
Yeah, the free fare is going to be huge because it's essentially marketing, right? So when you're under 18 and you ride the ferry with your parents and you go to college, you come back, get a job, and hey, look, we did this when I was a kid. It's fun. Kind of see the long game.
And there were a lot of people that took advantage of the free fare during that time period. I'm sure you all know people that did it. And they gleaned a lot of information from that as well. Anybody else have questions? Chris?
Yeah, just real quick, because we were told in Swansea that ERE was going to come in, we're going to have thousands upon thousands of riders, parking lot, entire system. It's a third full if that hasn't come back. I just don't know why we think the predictions going forward are going to be good. How were your predictions before? I've done this with Fred Bus also, where you can make it free, we can make it all free, and you'll have tons of riders. But is that really what core mission is? And if not, when we project going forward with numbers like that, I just don't know how realistic that truly is, because if you look at Swansea is still, that parking lot's a business. And it's been years since, and we were always told too that Caroline and people to the south will come up and jump on the ride too, and it just hasn't materialized. So I just don't know that hike, if that's going to be realistic, if we're going to be back here in 2030 to pull the slide back up and just go, how did we do?
Yeah, and while I can't speak to what kind of load factors we would see before the pandemic, that was before my time at ERE, but I will say that, these looks kind of, if you take the last 2 years of growth and recovery from the pandemic, the growth rate is actually pretty striking. Just every month, it seems like there's another 10 to 100 people, that are coming to the service. And so we kind of, we have a seasonal service or seasonal kind of demand because of vacations, federal holidays and that, but the general trend line is up. And if you simply drew a straight line up between now and 2030, if you didn't have service, you'd be fairly close to that 20.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but are we back to pre-pandemic levels?
No, we're not back.
Okay, so if we're not back to pre-pandemic levels in 4-year span, what is going to increase and triple our ridership 6-year span?
It's.
That's what I'm not.
There's a tremendous amount of, demand that's not being met because the service is very limited. It runs at a very limited time. You start to expand number of trains across the service day, you start to induce demand. People who said, well, I would take it up, but there's no train that gets me back, vice versa. That's a considerable component, but it is also just looking at simple projection from where we were, and how we've grown even in the last 2 or 3 years. And we recently ran the numbers, and we're pretty close to the projection, not right on, because it's a projection, but we're pretty close even 2 years ago where we thought.
So let me also introduce Christine Hoffner with VRE. She's the Director of Planning and Environmental Policy, and I'm sure they work together, and I'm sure she can add some.
Yeah, just to clarify from your point, as Nick said, and Ian pointed out too, when we expand service beyond what we do today, more frequent trains at different times of day, it does induce demand, because it becomes more convenient, more attractive to people that are taking you now. The other thing that with these forecasts is that they were developed using the regional travel model that relies heavily on forecast growth in population and employment, which the inputs are from the planning directors from all the jurisdictions within the region, including Stafford, Fredericksburg, and Spotsy. And that's where the 63% growth in population that Nick referred to. So that is a driver in coming up with these forecasts. It's based on what the communities, the jurisdictions think they're going to grow to in the future. So it takes that into account, so that growth in this particular location doesn't grow as quickly as it was forecast. That's going to affect the VRE ridership. When Spotsy station was built, the regional model and the forecasts are updated periodically, and over time, since the Spotsy station was built, the forecasts have reduced the forecast of population and employment growth based on what the jurisdictions think is going to be happening in the future. So that's going to vary over time too, depending on at what point in time.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So when you expand the service, common sense says that you'll get more. So, but do you base that on the expansion that you've done in the past and then use that as a model for going forward? So adding another train will add X. Because I would figure, I'm sorry, but I would figure that at some point you sort of tap out the number of people that need to go, because trains run, obviously, from point A to point B. You eventually tap out the number of people that need to go to point C. So adding more trains doesn't necessarily do anything because the number of people that need to get there are already getting there. They might just use different trains to get there.
The model doesn't look at specifically at individual transportation service. It looks at the regional perspective, and they maintain history of what ridership has been, and that's factored into the process. So as VRE, it will reflect historically as periods of added service, what the response ridership has been.
Holistically though.
I'm sorry.
Holistically, like
Yes,
for the entire
and
system.
also
Okay.
it looks at where people are coming from and, their travel time and mode share. So it has some logic built in that, what's going to make VRE most attractive to this type of trip.
Gotcha.
So it's a multiple number of factors that are included, but it does include historical performance. We periodically provide them with updated ridership information that they use to calibrate their model to add a degree of predictability based on tests.
Thank you.
It is a fact that if you add the Amtrak ridership and the VRE ridership together now, the total is higher than it was before the pandemic. So Amtrak has on the same track, but they're going a little further south. They are jointly, the two train systems are moving more people than they ever did in 2019. But Amtrak has added service during this last couple of years, whereas VRE hasn't yet. They're planning to add the service. By the end of the year, we're going to have some service. and then some more the following year, and it builds up to 20. So
The other thing you're gonna see with VRE is VRE was such a commuter service for so many years. They really, I don't know if you've noticed, but they never really had to advertise. And now they have a very robust advertising program, and you're gonna continue to see that, which I think has made a difference in all of our communities that use VRE. Monica?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know we don't want to let you get through your slide as well. Also, that with some of the changes that we've made now on the operations board as well is engaging a different type of traveler, right? And so we're also getting people like my constituents I hear from a lot that I would take it, but we don't have the flexibility that their work schedule has. You know, a lot of people have different, their work schedules are flexible now. They are going back but they're like, well, there's no training to take back at such time when I make it off this day or this day, it's different. And so having those additional cars or trains will allow that. And so we'll have an uptake. There are people who just never could ride before because of their
Okay. Nick?
Just the last slide here. Yes, next steps. So we're gonna keep on coordinating with the jurisdiction, transportation staff. We'll get FAMPO TAC meetings. And we look to go to the operations board hopefully the fall. No firm date yet. Adopt the plan, and then we'll have to return to PRTC and VTC after that for their adoption. And number 4 here, these are some of the things I mentioned at the top, areas of future study. We might be coming back to you in the next couple months with some results of some new things that we've looked at, you know, those and maybe others. So happy to take any last minute questions at the chair's permission. And other than that, thank you for having me.
Any questions for Nick or Christine? Yes.
Thanks. To Ian's point, is there any discussion about electrification for the commuter service?
Yeah, so no discussion at this point. What is likely to occur in the near term is the exploration of locomotive, like onboard locomotive, and how we can, as we start to age out our fleet, how we can start to procure the latest and greatest.
But if you're referring to the overhead catenary to extend that technology, that's not something. We're looking at very disciplined driveway that's in by Ray, so that would really be a decision that they have. And that are some visions as far as what the considerations would be if we were to electrify the railroad, see if that's even into the future. Something all the tracks, even primary.
next job is to get CSX off of the state of Virginia owned right-of-way tracks, which we purchased at several $1 billion. They've got an agreement to continue sharing the tracks. Once we've built the 3rd track,
Right.
then we should negotiate with CSX to get the freight trains off of our tracks, which we purchased. At that point, that all makes sense, but when they're still sharing, it's a nightmare.
And that's the other real issue with VRE is the congestion coming out of Union Station. We just need that other 3rd track, and that's the bottom line.
That's
So-
already actually 4 tracks. It's already signed. DJ said that they've signed the contract and the contractor is already moving on site. So that from Union Station to the river.
Yep.
Oh,
To
Alexandria.
And South Alexandria. 3 track segments.
It drops, yeah. But that first 4 track segment is funded. And they've what they call the north parcel, which is from the river to Union Station. Contractors already on site. Started.
Then we can get more freight off the
Well, that's really the whole thing, it's unlocking capacity for passenger.
Well, both, but just.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for you all
Thank you,
coming
Nick
down and
and
addressing
Sue.
the policy committee. Appreciate your efforts. Okay, next item is, resolution 2444, authorizing support for the, I'm sorry, we skipped Smart Scale Round 6 presentation,
So
by Carrie.
if I could just comment, Carrie is out of town, so Connor is doing the presentation for Carrie. Virtually none of this is new information. You've seen it almost every month for, gosh, 4 or 5 months. Tonight, we need you to either approve the resolution of support or approve the projects, depending on whether it's a GWRC list or the FAMPO list. Connor will go through the slides for us. I suggest you just approve all 3 together as a block. You don't need to, belabor
Okay.
the point. If you like what's on the slides, you could just have one vote for everything.
All right, Connor, you have the floor.
So these smart scale updates, timeline, July 15th is the support documents deadline.
Speak up, Connor.
July 15th is the support documents deadline. All materials must be in the portal for VDOT district review. Applicants can correct documents. August 1st is the application deadline. That's the portal off input. September, December will be the scoring period, and January 2025, you guys will have the preliminary scores for smart scale projects. This is the FAMPO projects. You have the Butler Road widening from Castle Rock Drive to Carter Street, the I-95 4-lane widening southbound exit 130 to 126. VDOT Route 208 pipeline study for Smith Station Road, as well as the one Road.
Those are the recommendations from the TAC, right?
Yes.
The TAC recommends those 4.
It's the TAC recommendation. Currently, they're conditionally screened out. That means that they are fixing items in the application, getting certain documents that are required for smart scale. It's just the process that they're going through. And FAMPO will work with VDOT to get this so they can screen. This is the GWRC projects list. You have the I-95 or 736 interchange Central Parkway project, Warrenton Road widening from Stafford Lakes Parkway to Village Parkway, Enon Road, Centerport Parkway connector, and then the VDOT Route 3 pipeline study from Old Plank Road / 5 Mile Road to Central Church Road. This is also approved by the TAC, and the same thing follows with the conditional screened out. Some things need to be changed within the project and additional documents. Sure. Those are the 2 lists for GWRC and FAMPO. All that's required now is for you guys to approve this.
Okay. Do you have any other slides? That's it. Okay.
Just a question.
Thank you, Connor. Any questions for Connor? I think we've seen these over and over and over.
To death.
Okay.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Okay, so we have 3 resolutions, just for the record, resolution 2444, resolution 2445, and resolution 2446.
All.
So do you want to, we're gonna approve all 3. If you're in, is there any discussion? Okay, if you're gonna approve all 3, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the RTA subcommittee update, Ian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is just the minutes from the last meeting. So you'll remember, those of you who attended the last meeting of the subcommittee, that was the final meeting. And in that meeting, we approved the minutes of the first 3 meetings of the subcommittee. However, we can't approve the minutes of the last meeting in the last meeting because we don't have them yet. So we brought them to the policy committee. Those of you who are on, or who were on the subcommittee, we'll take any amendments that you feel. Otherwise, we're asking you to approve the last set of minutes, which is for the last meeting that closed out that process.
Okay, yes.
So, I read the minutes and they're accurate to some, I don't know that the passion was conveyed.
We're happy to take amendments. We're happy to take amendments.
Right. The only thing is, I do think that in there, it might need to say something to the effect that, in the school, when we voted on the different
Percentage?
percentages and things of that nature, that we probably should have the votes on who voted for what.
Okay, we can,
Do you know what I'm saying? Only
Well, it wasn't
because
really a vote, it was
it was
more
a poll.
it was a
But-
straw
but-
poll. Hmm.
But it was, I think I said that I didn't
Yes,
feel that since we weren't wanting to participate, that maybe not being in on that conversation.
could we,
We take that as.
could we add an amendment which says that, following members were not in favor or something?
Yeah, I
Because
think,
it wasn't a formal vote.
right, I know, but I think that probably legislators are reading these minutes.
Sure.
And so it needs to be clear that this was Spotsylvania.
Yeah.
Except-
If I may.
Yeah, sure.
Is a possible solution to this. Yeah, amend the minutes to say if a straw poll was taken with note from Spotsylvania County that votes of members who did not wish to be a part of the RTA should not be considered in this straw poll.
Just something that just indicates
That
that.
reflects that.
So
polling.
is that wording okay?
Yeah,
that
that's
he
fine,
gave?
yeah.
So, Becky, we'll get from the recording that wording and we'll add it to the bottom of the minutes.
So that's why I said members and not localities.
Members, yes, we're not
Yeah.
going to do
Right,
localities, we'll say.
yeah, for the straw poll also, yes, about the members, yeah.
It's because there were also members from King George that
Right,
made
that
a
were
comment.
online,
So
correct.
we will just make those.
Yeah.
That sentence you gave and we will just put X number of members
Yeah.
did not support.
So,
Okay,
Madam Chair, if I may move to approve as amended.
okay. All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I
Okay,
have a
call-
discussion.
Yes, Dr.
Chairwoman.
Young.
So you're amending, and I understand what's being discussed, but if the tape it was being recorded, can you not go back to the recording and actually state what was said versus amending it to state what is being asked today?
Well, so it's already in there, Dr. Young, but what Lori is saying is she's like for it to be more specific. So I
Yeah,
think
that's what
that's
I'm
what-
hearing, more specific, but if you're amending it to be more specific, you're amending it, instead of amending it to be more specific, amend it to what it said. And then today, it would say, I want to make sure that it's clear that Spotsylvania XYZ. It was just my thought, because I'm thinking you're amending something that already happened to change it versus looking at what was said the day of and making sure that that was stated from in the minutes. That's all. And, that's
think-
just my
yeah.
comment.
I appreciate your comment. I think we're saying the same thing. You're saying that the board recording should reflect what exactly Lori is saying and that we shouldn't have to have an amendment.
No, I'm
Um,
saying that the what was already recorded, instead of amending it to what is said today, go back to the recording and make sure that that is what you're amending to say this is what was said versus amending it to say what is said today. That's all I'm saying.
Jace?
I don't think you could hear, oh, sorry.
Jason.
You said that already.
Thank you. Dr. Young, I think I was just trying to find the words to reflect what Supervisor Hayes did say at that meeting. It was just trying to find the right way to say it in a way that everyone would agree that that is exactly what happened.
Yeah,
That's all.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that anybody who's reading these minutes understands what occurred, because they're not going to go back and listen to the.
I think that Supervisor Graham and Supervisor Hayes both agree on what the wording should be. So if we're okay with that, we're happy to make that amendment if that's okay. So
Okay,
Yep.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, please cast your vote in favor, saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay,
I'll abstain.
okay, Crystal will abstain.
And,
She was not
So
present.
Childress.
And Supervisor Childress, they were not present at that subcommittee meeting. Okay, Next item is summary of the RTA subcommittee discussions that we had on May 30th, which lasted till, if I remember correctly, 9 o'clock, 9:30.
So, Madam Chair, the reason I put this one on the agenda is because we did receive an email from Mr. Mullins, who can't be here today, to say that he felt that that one sentence was not worded well, that it could be interpreted to mean that everybody was in agreement. So I take his point, and actually it's an easy thing to fix.
And which sentence is that,
It's
Ian?
that the following bullet points represent
Okay.
the general consensus or majority view. I wrote this and I found it difficult to know how to word that. So I put the or, right? But I think what he's saying is, if you say general consensus, somebody who wasn't there may read this and go, oh, they all agree. So I take his point. So I wish to say to you that what I would like to do is to delete that clause that says the general consensus or, and just say the majority view without saying general consensus. I will then, if you're happy with that language, I will then send this memo out again to all the people who I sent it to the first time and say, please disregard the first version. Here is the amended version that we would like you to
Madam
use.
Chair.
Yes.
I think Drew wants to say something.
Oh,
he's
is he?
online.
I thought he was.
Yeah, he's online. He's listening online.
Drew, would you like
Would
to
you like
address the policy committee?
Give us some wording that we can change.
I know he's online. He told me he was.
I don't see his name, but I do see a phone number.
He's on mute, probably.
He said he's trying to speak.
Is he on?
Okay.
Mute?
Are
He
you
might be
on?
on mute.
Yeah,
Oh,
Drew,
Drew.
are you on mute?
Alternatively, if he types in the chat box, Connor can read it.
Try and text in the chat box.
Unless he just dialed in on his
Text in the
phone.
chat box.
I don't know. I see there's one thing that says iPhone and one that says just a telephone number. I don't see Drew's name on the participants.
What are the?
Yeah, he's out of the country.
He's on the phone.
I think his phone is muted. He needs to unmute it.
Can I ask to unmute?
Are you muted?
Yes, can you unmute from there?
I can say ask to unmute, but I don't have.
Do that.
His number is 571.
277.
Yes, that's him.
Click ask to unmute.
I call.
Okay, so hopefully he sees that and then he unmutes.
Okay.
It's fine. Okay, just
Is it *6?
Yes.
There he
Unmute.
goes.
Hello.
There he goes. He's unmuted.
There we go. We can hear you. Hooray. Hooray. Give us your comments.
Okay, hey guys, I've been listening to the whole thing, just waiting for Ian to speak here. I'm actually trying to pull up what is it you want to address there specifically, Ian?
So the sentence that I think you were concerned about is the sentence that speaks about general consensus. Am I correct? That's the problematic phrase that you don't like.
I'd say that's one of the points, yes, because.
So what I suggested is that we take that out. So we take out the general consensus, or we remove that and we say just the majority view. Would that be acceptable, or do you have some better wording that we could put in there in place of that?
Well, I think the gist of what I was trying to say was mentioned with Lori's comments about
the minutes.
The actual, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Drew.
The gist of the letter was, or the comments back to you, also touched on what Lori was and Dr. Young were referring to, and it's a bit complicated. Yes, I would say that generally speaking, it would be the general consensus impression, because it wasn't. Yes. It was a minority impression. It was a minority of the people present that drove the conversation. It was not a majority, and it was not a general. It was a general minority that drove it.
No.
I don't think that's a fair. Unfortunately, I think the head count showed that it was a majority.
Well, not of the actual substance.
Okay, so All right, let's look at all the bullets here. Let's start, can you scroll up a
down.
little bit,
There you
Connor,
go.
because I want to go through each bullet. No, I'm sorry, go the other way.
There you go.
Okay, so Drew, if you could start over with your statement and your question as it relates to this.
If I may, Madam Chair, can you give me a couple of minutes? I need to pull it up on my other phone. I'm using both phones right now.
I do have a possible compromise while he's doing that.
All right, that's fine.
If we have a concern about whether something was a majority, could we perhaps put the phrase, so if you say the following bullet points represent the majority view of members from localities who wish to join a regional transportation authority.
That's a lot.
But it is, but this is a legal, but now we're talking about in legal terms, and this excludes everything from, Spotsylvania counties.
Sure.
I think what I was hearing that he was saying, and he's probably listening to Mr. Mullins, if you can hear.
Might want to speak up.
While you were
Yeah.
talking. Still, if I'm just gonna kind of recap what I heard from you. Which is that it sounded like you were saying there was a minority on the board driving the conversation. That's kind of what I was hearing. Even though it was the majority that decided on the points that we kind of pulled through. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, yes, can you hear me okay right now? Sorry about that.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Lori might want to add something.
I think, what, Drew, I think what maybe, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think the concern from us is that when you read this and it talks about the majority, general consensus, things like that, it doesn't say, I mean, really, if you want to get down to it, it was Fredericksburg and Stafford in favor. And, Chris was sort of there too, but I don't know how we want to do this, but
Yeah, that's right.
I'm trying to think, like, how do we, because we do have a resolution that states that we want an opt-out version, right?
Right,
So-
but here's the thing, when you say that Stafford was in favor, I made it very clear that we had not taken
That's
this
true.
to our
You did.
board.
You did.
So, Crystal, I'll come to you in
That's
just
true.
a minute. So, tomorrow night at our Board of Supervisor meeting, Ian is, and this was exactly how I laid it out at the meeting. Ian is making a 10-minute presentation at our board meeting tomorrow night. And then on the 26th of this month, when we have a work session, we are giving him 30 minutes. And then our board can do a deeper dive, if you will, on the whole RTA. So while I was participating as a policy committee member at the RTA subcommittee meeting, I was participating in the poll, but I was not making statements on behalf of Stafford County.
That's
So I
true.
want to make that
I
very clear.
apologize. I
Yeah.
take that back.
Okay,
That's true.
Crystal, you had something.
So if you'll remember back to the conversation we had when I said I couldn't attend the meeting because I'd be flying, I said, what we really need is a summary from the committee to take back to our jurisdictions who haven't voted, because Spotsy has clear direction from their board that they're against the RTA. Not taking that back to our board, so we needed a summary talking about the pros and the cons. This doesn't talk about the pros and the cons. It also doesn't talk about the repercussions of Caroline, King George, and Spotsylvania and the things that they've brought forward. So to me, a summary memo of understanding of, hey, here's where it started. This is what was proposed. This is how it got to FAMPO. These are the committee meetings we had. We reviewed. Good part about creating an RTA. Here's the challenging part about creating an RTA. Here are the things that we should consider and note to then help guide those localities into whether or not they wanted to execute an RTA. This also doesn't have any funding associated with it. So the whole point of this memo was to be able to reach our board members who are not part of the FAMPO policy committee in a full summary. This is so high level, in my opinion, it doesn't do any of that.
So tomorrow night, Ian has 9 slides that are part of our RTA, that I reviewed them last Friday, made a few edits on a few wording things that I thought needed to be maybe a should versus a, or a may versus a should, you know. Anyway, I made some corrections that were just for our board and for the public. So he's gonna go over those tomorrow night, and then, you know, our board will be able to make a decision probably at our August meeting. Because at our work session, we don't have the ability to vote. So that's kind of where we are. And in the 30-minute presentation that he's gonna do, that's when I've talked to him about, you've got to show all the numbers. The numbers are what tell the story. In my mind, it's about the numbers.
So then, in that regard, I think we need a motion. Till we have,
Madam Chair.
Okay,
I believe if I get a second, the table receives no discussion.
I'd second that.
Madam Chair.
No discussion.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Can I guess what, may I just interject? I guess the second paragraph of Ian's memorandum, it says the following bullet points represent the general consensus or majority view of what the term should be if an RTA is formed within the region. I would just say if that could be changed to reflect the following bullet points represent the consensus of the 2 localities, et cetera, because, and then it doesn't say it doesn't say majority view. It just says, it clearly kind of paints the picture of who put in the most input.
okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to defer this item.
It's actually to table it.
To table.
Without a discussion.
Right,
Okay,
So
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no, there's a motion.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Go ahead. I'm good with it now, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
All right, so, is there any discussion?
Not allowed to
Yeah,
discuss.
that's right. Not allowed to discuss to table something, so I apologize. Okay, all in favor of tabling this item until, would be the August meeting, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
But we already have
Aye.
3 people here from Spotsylvania, so I
Okay.
don't
Strike my vote.
vote, I'm sorry.
I'll vote aye.
Um,
Strike my vote.
Yes, please.
But it's a vote on something that,
Yeah,
So can I just clarify something
okay, who
technically?
knows? Yeah, okay, Ian.
So this is not put to you for a vote at all. And I was asked by the subcommittee members who were present in this room to write a summary of the bullet points that were proposed in the meeting. That's all it is. It's not for any decisions. There's no action required for it. It was meant to be a list of the things that were proposed so that you can show it to your board and ask them if they like those items on the list or not. That's all it was meant to be. It's not meant to do all of those other things that you would like, which we can do. The reason I brought it to you today is because Mr. Mullins felt, and I understand his concerns, that that sentence gives the wrong impression. So all I'm doing today is saying to you that I don't want to in private go and fiddle with this thing. I want to do it in front of you and ask you if I can remove that sentence so that you can still use the memo for the purpose it was designed, not to make any decisions, just to give you that list of points that were made in the meeting. That's all it's supposed to do. It's not a decision.
Okay.
Call for the no votes, please. Chair, 4 yes.
Okay, for those that were voting to table it, raise your hand just so I know exactly how many. Okay, 4. Okay, no votes to not table it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Chris.
I have a suggestion to fix what Mr. Mullins is looking for. If it can just say that the following bullet points represent the majority view of the members of the subcommittee present and in no way reflects a vote in favor of, just add a little bit more explanation, I think is what he's looking for, so that somebody 3 years from now doesn't look at this and go, wow, they really wanted this and what happened.
Right,
So
right.
just more detail into it is fine.
Okay, all right.
Can we pull the board on if that would be?
If that phrase there can be used, I'll do
Yeah,
that.
I'm not gonna pull the
You
board
have
on,
that.
we'll just move forward. That's what the will of the board is. So, Drew, does that language make sense to you? What Chris said? You might need to
I
repeat
believe
it.
so, and I believe so, Madam Chair, and I don't want to belabor this point any longer. Just generally speaking, the general consensus or majority view was the only issue that I had. I realized that Caroline wasn't there, King George wasn't, and we were against it, except for Mr. Yakubowski. So that was my only point, because like you said, years from now, someone's going to read this, and it's going to look different when they read it than being present. That's all.
Okay. Yes,
Well, that's why I wanted it tabled, so we could come together as a board to provide feedback, because this is just 4 bullets. I mean, you could have asked us 3 months ago, and we all talked about it at the very first committee meeting. And it even says in the bottom bullet, 4 taxes should be included in the legislation as follows, and it lists those, it says should. It doesn't say
Exactly.
may be considered. It doesn't
Right.
say localities prefer one over the other. This is not, I'm very worried about this document being out there that could be forwarded by some unknowing board member to a state delegate, and when legislation is drafted on it, as it sits here, even though there is not a majority.
that's already happened, by the way.
Yeah, in Stafford
So-
County. So that's why I wanted to table it, so that we could get at least our talking points together, because in my opinion, this document is not reflective at all of what the intent should have been, which is a summary of the RTA actions, all the things we considered, the pros and the cons, and all of that stuff. So maybe then we could just agree to have the FAMPO staff go back and put that stuff in a document that we could share with it. But I am very concerned about this particular document being sent around, making it look like we want all these taxes in a piece of RTA legislation as they're drafting it this summer.
I mean, we could
Okay.
take the should out as well.
Is that?
But it doesn't even count, it doesn't even say that the localities agreed upon this tax, or here are the risks of including this other tax. Those are the hard, that was what the RTA was supposed to get to, was
Right.
those hard decisions on what is the competing funding and what does that look like? And if Spotsylvania is not a part of it, what does that do to the validity of the RTA?
Yeah, hang on, let her finish. Are you
So,
finished?
well, I would very much appeal to the FAMPO board again to send back to the FAMPO staff and draft something more representative of all of the items that the RTA looked at with all the different feedback that was.
So let me go back to this, and then I'll come back to you, Monica. What is the purpose of this letter? I know that we asked for it. How is it gonna be used?
Can I respond?
Sure.
Okay. My understanding was that this was just to give us a framework to go back and talk to our boards, just as you said, and that we would have that presentation, and then we would have the work session. So I do think it would be appropriate to go back and change some shoulds to mays, what have you. I think that's fine. I don't want to, overburden staff or anything. It's just reflective of what we've gone through, and I think with a few little adjustments, it should be just fine. But this is the high level. And then we can get into the weeds, and each of us have planned to do that in our different localities. So that makes sense to me. I thought that was the purpose.
Okay. Will?
Yeah, I just want to agree with what Supervisor Jerry said, because I think I was the one who asked for this originally, right? And my thought was like,
Remember, it was too long.
I was wanting something to take to my colleagues on council and say, like, this is as the RTA subcommittee worked through all this whole range of different ideas over the course of the spring, right? This was the view that the majority of the members of the RTA subcommittee kind of landed on. And this is sort of the thing, right? Now, what do you, city council, think of it, right? So that the city can have an opinion. That's all I was asking for, is I want, frankly, Mr. Hollis to do the work of distilling it down for me, so I wouldn't have to do it for them, right?
Okay, anybody else? So the only, I would prefer, if we're gonna use this document, the 4 taxes funding could be included. I think because we don't know what should be done. I mean, we kind of all have an idea. Oh,
Well,
okay.
Madam Chair, there is one point I want to make to that, which was that a majority of those who were present at the last work session did agree that those were the things that we should be discussing. And so in that regard, I mean, maybe we can clarify that language, not that we should do this, just. as
Right.
localities,
We did vote for
this is
those
what we
four.
Looked at
Right.
as a subcommittee.
I don't have a problem with that, but I don't,
Because we did take polling on those.
right.
So it should reflect that.
So we could, okay,
So we're proposing like this to change using the sentence that Mr. Jakubowski proposed.
the following
place.
bullets represent consent, is that consensus? Consensus of the two
No,
localities.
that's not what Mr. Jakubowski said.
No,
No, what I said was,
No.
Peter, thank you. If I may, Madam Chair. If I might, I'm addressing Mr. Mullins' concern. The rest of it, the whole point to the RTA subcommittee was that we could hash out this stuff. We talked about what other people were doing, what we wanted it to look like. And we were appealing to Richmond that if you're gonna force this on us, these are the things we would like and the parameters, and then the things that we really don't want. That's why I voted the way that I did. So, but to Mr. Mullins' point, because somebody can read this document if it doesn't go through this year, but maybe 3 years from now, that they don't use that as an excuse and say, well, the majority wanted it, that's what they asked for. So
I don't think it's gonna be 3 years. I think it's gonna be this year.
well, right, but to his point, I'm just addressing his point that if what it should say is it should reflect what the RTA subcommittee was all about. It was not making a decision on behalf of any locality whatsoever, nor were we making decisions for our boards at all. We
Okay,
were simply here to figure out the parameters of what an RTA is, how it exists, how it operates, how it is funded. And then that information was going to be disseminated back to our independent or our own localities for our localities to make those decisions, not the RTA subcommittee in any way.
okay, got it. All right, so let's figure out, I'll
Somebody write that.
even be okay with the should down there, because that is what the subcommittee, agreed to. So the
That's-
following bullet points, what was your language, Chris?
Rewind the tape.
It's on the recording, but it sounded wonderful when you read it the first time.
Thank you. I don't work on notes.
Okay,
This represents the majority view, but does not
In no way reflect.
in no way reflects
The positions of the
the
jurisdiction.
positions of the jurisdictions that make up FAMPO and GWRC.
perfect. Okay, is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so now,
I
it's
will,
not really, are we
you
voting on
don't,
it?
you don't need to vote, you just need to give
Okay.
me an instruction.
Okay,
And I will go and amend this memo and I will send it to everybody I sent the first version to, and I'll say, please disregard the first version. Here is the amended up-to-date version. Please use this in your discussions with your localities and whatever.
and have you, did you send this to any of our senators and delegates?
I will, one of them asked for a copy, but I've not
And
sent
who
it
was
far
that?
and wide. That was the gentleman that proposed the last version.
McPike.
And then McPike.
Okay,
But I will send it back. Everybody that's in my outbox will get this with a note that says, please disregard the version that was sent to you, and it's basically yourselves.
Okay.
Right? And this replacement version will replace what you received.
okay,
Please disregard the first version.
okay, yes, Ms. Hayes,
And you got the paperwork from us, right?
No,
Okay.
I was in the meeting, so I heard what you said, but I haven't got
So
any
you should have
paperwork.
gotten that, and the email from Kathy in King George
Yes, that's in the
should
minutes.
also be part of the package that you send out.
correct.
It's in the minutes.
Okay,
So the minutes capture that she made a thing and we read it out in the meeting and.
I saw that in the minutes. But, I mean, I think that's our communication to you
I'll
guys.
send you these minutes as well if you want. I'm gonna send it all to you and like the city manager and Mr. McPike asked for a copy. So those are the people I send it to. I'll send it to the same people with those amendments. And I will send a copy of the minutes of the meeting.
Okay,
Was that okay?
Yeah, I just, yeah.
Bristol?
I still have a challenge.
Madam Chair.
Because there's no disclaimer on here stating that Spotsylvania doesn't intend to participate. King George and Caroline will leave the planning district. And then it doesn't talk about the implications of the potential, the different taxes. Like I feel like if this truly is to educate lawmakers and our respective localities, there needs to be a disclaimer talking about the implications of the taxing authority regarding that it'll have competing funding for field construction or something like that. That's completely missing out of here with just the 4 different bullets of the things that you're suggesting that the legislator create as a taxing ability within the legislation. So I think and now I'm even more concerned than when I started this conversation, because if McPike is asking for a copy of this, then where is the disclaimer saying that Stafford and the city of Fredericksburg haven't taken a position on it? And that would be forthcoming potentially to let you know if it's suitable. This is just a midterm summary that we haven't even agreed upon. And we're sending it out to legislators.
I mean,
The work is complete.
I have no problem. I think that's full transparency, full disclosure. If you wanted to attach anything from Spotsylvania
Yeah.
that you all approved and the email from King George, I think they would appreciate that, having it attached to this.
And then something
And
from the chair of Stafford saying we haven't
Stating
voted.
that Stafford is, in the process of discussing. Yes, Monica?
I think we're gonna attach. We all want to send emails and attach it as well. I mean, this is just becoming a lot. I don't think any legislator at the state level is gonna look at this as a memorandum that came out of a subcommittee of FAMPO and think this is how they want us to write legislation.
Uh-huh.
These are all their positions. Then how, they shouldn't even be there if that's the case. You know what I mean? We're getting a little far.
Yeah.
This, I'm not done talking.
Madam Chair.
So, this is what this was
Hang on one
intended to
second,
do.
Drew.
Sorry, Drew.
Okay.
What it intended to do was just provide what we talked about in the subcommittee so that we could go forward in our conversations with localities. It's nothing more than that. I don't think anyone's mistaken it for anything more than that. If we want to change some language or something and we've talked through that, I think that's fine. But beyond that, I mean, each one of us could say, I want to send an email and give my opinion, and we'll attach that. And it just seems like a lot. So I'd really like to just go forward with the memo as being adjusted by staff, being amended.
Okay, thank you. Drew. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Ms. Vanucci is all over this. My main objection to the memorandum, as I relayed to Mr. Hollis, was exactly that. By putting it down in a memorandum, it's a written document. It becomes part of the record, legal, whether it's agreed upon or otherwise, doesn't matter. It's a legal document that's part of the record. And taken out of context, documents can take on a life of their own. And the fact that a Richmond representative has a copy of a discussion from within the subcommittee, that can give the wrong impression to anybody who's only looking at it in that context. Everybody else in the room understands the context, but no one outside of the room will. That's why it's critical that we don't just, gaff this off. I think should be stricken, and may is more appropriate, because it's going to be part of a document, whether it's agreed upon after your board meetings or otherwise. It doesn't matter. That's what's critical here. And if it's version 2 of the memorandum, that's fine, and it shows a history of the changes. So again, that's the last I had to say. I think you guys got it. I think Ms. Vanucci is raising the proper concerns, and it'll all get hashed out. But words matter. I live with a lawyer. She's a prosecutor. She hammers me daily on my words, so I understand how this works. Thank you.
I think you make some good points. I go back to the fact that the reason I'm okay now with should was because that was what subcommittee polling reflected, okay? I do agree with you, and I do agree with Crystal that this document, I've been around long enough in politics to know, this document is going to be used either for us or against us, depending on where you end up on this. There is no doubt about it. And I know that, you know, people have been communicating with McPike more than you might want to even know. So this, it is going to happen. This will be the document. So if there's anything, I think that we should be adding in information on Stafford, Caroline, Spotsylvania, and King George. And if you want full transparency, I mean, why not?
And that there was a.
If you want a summary.
Absolutely,
that-
absolutely, Madam
That
Chair.
includes the summary of the subcommittee's work. Unless you want to add
agree.
something additional in a paragraph, in that paragraph, stating exactly what the other jurisdictions have already decided.
So the date of this document, no,
I saw it was May 31st.
Spotsylvania's meeting happened after this. This was meant to be the summary for people to take to their jurisdictions. That was the purpose of this. Spotsylvania met after this. So it's anachronistic to go and add into this memo. It's okay to attach things to it, but you hadn't yet met when this memo was asked of me.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
But it is important
Yeah.
information
Yes.
that the document is attached to this.
Sure.
Absolutely. I did speak with Senator McPike
Okay.
at PRTC, and I did tell him respectfully,
That you'd not.
if, please don't, if you're gonna do something, then you have to have an opt-out, opt-in, or whatever you wanna call it. Because, you know, just please do, he didn't promise anything. So it will be used for or against us, 100%. So I would just attach the, you should have it soon.
If you send me the document, I'll
Yeah,
attach it.
okay.
That's no problem. Sorry.
I have a request.
Sure.
I think might help, so maybe if we can just do some corrections to this as has
Yes.
been discussed. And then maybe even a follow-up memo with that information that what has happened was transpired since in localities and the decisions that have been made by your board. Is that something that
I mean, I think that's a positive.
could include that information?
So-
Yeah,
So the
I
thing-
think it would be important to have in that paragraph that we change exactly where the other localities are. Stafford is in the process of putting information before their board of supervisors, and then they're having a work session. And their board hopes to vote on this at their August, whatever our first meeting is, first and only meeting is in August. You know,
Sorry. The reason I was
Spotsylvania,
asking-
yes.
I mean, the reason I was asking to do it in a follow-up is because as was pointed out, it hadn't happened yet. And so this memo was to be for the conclusion of the subcommittee and with the work that had been done there. So that maybe there's an add-on that can go with it, whether it's attachment or what have you. But I wouldn't change the original language of this memo to put the information that happened afterwards in the localities in it, if that makes sense. That's just my preference. I think would make more sense.
Okay, why don't we just date this June? Why does it have to be May 31st?
Because it's already been written.
So just to back up, I was asked in the subcommittee meeting if I could please summarize those points to send out to the representatives who wanted something that was the summary of the options discussed to take to their jurisdictions for further discussion.
Sure.
So that's what this is. This
But
is
it's-
not a decision.
No, I understand, but you are now reporting to the policy committee, and I don't think the date of your document should be May 31st. I think the date of your document should be today, June, because that's when you're actually preparing to send the memo out. Gerald?
What you just said about taking the consensus, taking everything out. This was just the findings of the RTA subcommittee, nothing else. This is a report back to for each jurisdiction or locality to speak to their board, take all the rest of it out, just put that. Because that was the findings, right? So, and just leave it as that. And that this is going back to each jurisdiction or each locality so they can make their decision.
I like that.
That's pretty darn simple.
So-
Okay.
So just give us that for the recording, because we're going to use your language.
I'm like Chris, I didn't take notes.
So
We
this,
take all of the language
this
out.
memorandum just represents the discussion held at this meeting on that day
The findings.
to
Findings.
findings,
Findings,
which will now go back to jurisdictions for discussion,
Correct.
period.
Yeah.
Okay,
for decision.
all right. Anybody
Chair.
against what Gerald just said? Drew?
Yes, ma'am. Can we ask the staff there to please not socialize this with anyone, any policymakers?
Public document.
It becomes a public document, so I don't think that's, yeah.
I didn't hear
It'll-
the discussion, I'm sorry.
In terms of FOIA, every document of FAMPO is a
Yeah.
public document, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's information that we're discussing here, so I wouldn't be
Well-
surprised if it was in somebody's hands later tonight, so, or they may have reviewed our
Okay.
FAMPO agenda, so that's not really, I appreciate your request, but that's not really feasible.
And in the future,
Legal.
whenever we have draft documents like this, it should have a red mark draft on it. So that it can never be confused for a final document.
Well, it is a final
Exactly.
document because it's a summary for you to use. So it is a final document. It's not a draft because it's not.
It's not final
just a
until it's final. Can you
summary.
put draft across it?
Okay,
You can.
but this isn't a vote, remember, this isn't a vote, this is part of, really, it's
It's meant
part
to
of
be
your.
information.
It was really to be a part of your administrator comments, really. Okay, all right, moving right along.
So
It
I'm
looks
gonna,
like we're all in agreement.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
make
Gerald.
that, yes, Mr. Childress's sentence and take out that sentence. And I will then circulate it back to all of you via email.
Okay. All right, thank you for everyone's patience. Okay, the next item is item D, resolution 2447, approving the slate of officers to serve in the fiscal year 2025. We need to vote on our chair first.
And the resolution is blank, so we are waiting for nomination.
Mr. Childress,
I'd like to nominate or recommend Lori Hayes
okay? For chairman, because Spotsylvania.
for chairman for Spotsylvania, yes.
Okay. Do we have to have a second? These,
Second.
second, okay.
Second, yeah.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Lori Hayes as chair for FAMPO starting July 1 through June 30th of 2025, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, congratulations, you will be chair.
No,
The next,
working with you.
me too. The next is
First.
first vice chair.
First vice chair, which would
Okay,
be
what would be the
Frederick.
city of Fredericksburg, Jason?
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Will McIntosh as first vice chair of FAMPO for July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Who was the second? Sorry.
Chris.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I could.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. And our last is the second vice chair, which would be Stafford
Stafford.
County. I motion to for Crystal Banucci. Second.
Can the chair make a motion?
I don't know.
Oh, well, then I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay,
Mr. Childress, second.
any discussion?
be from a different jurisdiction.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll second.
Chair.
Yeah.
I just want to.
just messing it all.
Then on this board for the full time that I've been on the board and not had an opportunity to be in leadership on this board.
Say that. I've been at it for 5 years.
Been here for 10 years.
Yeah.
For staffer, so I know that
Yeah.
I'm just sharing that.
Okay. All right.
We leave it to the jurisdictions to
Okay.
nominate.
Any further discussion? All in favor of, let's see, we already voted on Will. Yeah. Okay, all in favor of, Crystal? Banu?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
No,
Have our-
there's a no vote. We did.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, one, thank you, one no vote.
Miss Laurie Hayes has
Yeah.
an item.
Meg.
Oh. Okay, right, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we
Wait,
have a,
can we skip down to 9F first?
sure.
Okay, let's go to the VDOT item. Is anybody opposed to moving the agenda around?
No.
Okay, the add-on item for VDOT is 9F. Marcy, if you could just explain, or Ian, what this is, the tip, and what our public comment period will be.
So it's a tip amendment. We require a minimum of 20 days public comment. And so I understand that the resolution is to commence the public comment period by your decision tonight. Because you don't meet in July, the public hearing would be held at your August meeting. And then if you so move in your August meeting, you would then adopt the item into the tip at the August meeting. So the resolution tonight is to put this out for public comment. And it's the item that Marcy Parker explained to you at the beginning of the meeting.
So moved.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have our motion there. Okay, next, going back to the item, resolution 448.
Yes, so we have a resolution, recognizing the dedicated service of Meg Bomke. Whereas the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization serves as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for the Fredericksburg region. And whereas Ms. Bomke has served with distinction as chair of the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization from July 2023 to June 2024. And whereas Ms. Bomke carried out her responsibilities with great diligence and dedication, and now therefore be it resolved that the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization expresses its deepest appreciation and most sincere thanks to Ms. Bomke for her dedicated service as chairman.
Yes.
Margaret.
Who is that?
Thank you, Dr. Young.
So, I guess we need a motion to approve this.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
And we have a certificate for you.
yes. Here you are, Meg.
Thank you.
The hardest you've ever worked for.
Madam Chair,
All
just
right, we have a little bit more business.
two quick announcements. It is Mr. City Councilman Jason Graham's last meeting tonight as a policy committee member.
Oh, really?
He is becoming an alternate to the policy committee, and a new member has been elected by the City Council of Fredericksburg in the person of
John Gerlach.
John Gerlach will be joining FAMPO policy committee from next month. So he will be the representative at the August meeting. And also, Connor Anderson over there at the computer, you know, we have complained in the past that our staff have been stolen from us by Northern Virginia.
Oh.
What you don't know is that we stole Connor from Northern Virginia and now is going back.
Don't go back, no.
So Connor has got a fantastic new position close to home, and will be leaving FAMPO from Wednesday this week. Also to let you know that we have already recruited his replacement, who has accepted our offer, and it's somebody you know who was working as an intern. So our lovely intern leader Hinkle, who you might have seen operating the computer once or twice. She's done some marvelous work for us as an intern and is now coming off to full-time staff to do GIS and data analysis for us, and she'll be replacing Connor. So we don't have a vacancy. It's a smooth transition. In fact, I offered her the position the day after Connor resigned because we were so happy with her work. So she'll be joining us
Wow.
from she's away on summer camp training young people. But as soon as summer camp is done, she'll be joining the FAMPO staff. So we've already replaced Connor, but we just want to thank Connor for doing some amazing work.
Yes.
Going back to your original home and where you were, your previous employer
No.
or a new?
Also, I'm up in Fairfax and I got a job working for VHB. I'm gonna be in the Tyson's office. So I start next week.
Oh, that's exciting.
So he actually now works for our own consultant. So he might come back here and still do presentations for VHB when we need work done. So
Yes.
there you go.
Well, that's great. We'll miss you. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. And Jason, we'll miss you too.
Mhm.
So, all right, we do have some correspondence. I don't think we need to go over that. Everybody
No.
can read it on their own.
Sure.
I think I will say this meeting is adjourned unless board members have any comments. Anybody have any comments? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Hi, Pam.
Thank you, everyone.
And you can have the.
Thank you for the resolution. We'll put that in the response.